It might be April, but March Madness is still very much alive with Final Four action about to get underway.
Welcome into Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood. From blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Saturday. Happy Final Four day. And welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host for today, Andy Patton, joined by some of our phenomenal hosts on the Locked On Podcast Network, including Matt Shonvisky of Locked On UConn, Nick Arvin of Locked On Boilers, and my co-host on Locked On College Basketball and the host of Locked On Tar Heels, Isaac Shade.
You need a coach.
Some of these coaches might end up in Chapel Hill, although it's looking less and less likely by the day. Folks, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. During the tournament, FanDuel is offering $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days, so head to FanDuel.com to get started. Well, as much as I'd love to talk coaching carousel, and frankly, my favorite topic of the day, the biggest news, in my opinion, of the college basketball world, Mark Few is officially a Hall of Famer. How exciting. If it was up to me, we'd talk about that for 40 minutes. I think we'd lose a lot of listeners very quickly. So let's go ahead and, I guess, talk instead about the Final Four matchups coming up today. We got UConn versus Illinois, the number 3 seeded Illini versus the number 2 UConn Huskies. We'll talk about that game first, and then we'll move on and talk about the 2 1 seeds on the other side of the bracket, number 1 Michigan versus number 1 Arizona. And we'll close out the show with some predictions, some X factors, some storylines, various other things as we get ready for these games, which are going to be underway in just almost exactly 3 hours from right now.
We should have done that where we started right at 6:09 Eastern time.
We were close. If we had planned to do that, we probably would have started at 15 anyway, because that's typically how it goes.
That's fair.
Let's start with this first game, the first game of the night here. It'll be number 3 Illinois, Brad Underwood, and the Illini, the Balkan club here, getting all the way through. Most people didn't think they'd make it past Houston since they played them in Houston, and yet here they are advancing all the way to the Final Four, first time in about 20 years for them, taking on, of course, a team that has been here far more recently in Danny Hurley and the UConn Huskies. This game at 6:09 Eastern time. It'll be on TBS. FanDuel actually favors the lower seeded team, the Illini, by 1.5. And Matt, we'll start with you, obviously, as the host of Locked On UConn, watching this run, watching what was one of the most extraordinary comebacks and individual shots that we have seen in the NCAA tournament in that game against Duke. How did this UConn team get here? Are you surprised to see them here? And I asked you this on the Bracket Breakdown show last week. Has your heart rate come down after that shot by Braylon Mullins in the Elite Eight?
I think I can speak for all the UConn Nation that we are still flying high off that win over Duke and hoping to carry that momentum into tonight against Illinois. I think the team talked about they're not here just to be here. It's a business trip for them. The experience that they've had in a Final Four. This is their third time in the last 4 years. This coaching staff, some of the players that have been here, Alice Caravan's third Final Four, Solo Ball, Jaden Ross, Jalen Stewart, all have been here before. So they're here to win. They're not here just to show up. Illinois hasn't been here in 21 years. UConn's been here now 3 of the last 4 years, and they know how to get through this type of week. A lot more media, a lot of prep goes into all the pregame videos that will be on the broadcast networks, all of that. UConn's been here before and knows how to deal with that. And they can focus more on the task at hand rather than some of the distractions of Final Four weekends.
That's one thing that kind of stood out to me that Isaac and I talked about a little bit too, of like how much of an advantage do we think that it is that Dan Hurley has been here before? And obviously also, like you said, Caravan and Ball and some of those other guys, because like if all things were equal, which I'm not quite sure they are, but if all things were equal, I think I would give a lean to the coaches who've been there because of some of the stuff you talked about of like knowing what the media looks like, knowing what, just the environment and the nerves, and maybe being able to recognize how certain players are handling the moment, because you've seen how certain players handle the moment, and maybe that kind of helps give you an advantage. And I don't think that I was hesitant to say that that's a huge advantage, because I think that implies that like Brad Underwood and Illinois are going to have no idea what to do. And I don't think that that's accurate or true, but on some level, I think it has to be relevant that Hurley has been, not only been here in his career, but been here very, very recently in the modern era. For his third time in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and it's still a basketball court, but it's also a different setting too. You're in a football stadium, much more. It's a different background you're shooting into. So having some of that experience, it's going to help. It's not going to be a major factor by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like it will be a factor, maybe even early on, as you're taking in the environment and, like I said, new shooting background, backdrop, and all of that. But listen, I mean, if UConn's healthy, I've been saying this all season long. I feel like UConn is the best team in the country. Even Arizona, even Michigan, I still think UConn is that team to beat if they are fully healthy. And if they could take care of the basketball, I think that's one of the keys to tonight. Turnovers. They only had 5 against Duke. Against St. John's, if you think back to some of the games that they had at Madison Square Garden in the Big East Tournament, Silas Demery Jr. alone had 9 turnovers. So if you could value the basketball, value every single possession, I think UConn, and we saw this matchup earlier on in the season. I know both teams are different than they were, but I like UConn's advantage in this game.
How about those Illinois fans, though? They're traveling to Indianapolis pretty well. I saw the open practice. It was entirely orange. So that could be a factor in this one as well as UConn. A bit of a away game in Indianapolis, so to speak, on the neutral floor.
Matt, you mentioned one of the things I'm curious about in this game is like it felt like against the Duke front line, AK kind of really struggled with whether they were going at him with Brown or Boozer or Gongba, whoever it was. And I know they ended up bringing some doubles. Of course, that's hard against Boozer because of his passing capability. Illinois, to me, presents a very similar size. Like Mirkovic is going to be really difficult for AK. Do you think they bring doubles again? And how do you think they handle that?
I don't know. We'll see how they handle it defensively. One of my bigger concerns that I talked about in the pregame show on Locked On UConn was foul trouble. They got to stay out of foul trouble. If you look back at the first game, Terrace Reed had 4 fouls. He played 15 minutes, had 2 points, both free throws. He was a complete non-factor in that game. So he's got to be able to stay out of foul trouble because during this run that UConn is on, and since they had some struggles late in the year, the difference is his play. His consistency has been an absolute key to this team becoming what Dan Hurley has been talking about this entire season, what they're capable of. And what we've been seeing over the last couple of games as this tournament run has gone on is a Terrace Reed that has been an absolute monster, 31-27 against Furman. And then he's consistently, he did it again against Duke offensively. Not quite as many rebounds and all that, but he was a dominant factor on the offensive end. And if he could stay on the court, I think he's going to have some great success offensively.
Any update on Solo? It just feels, or not Solo, sorry, on Silas. Feels like he's just, Silas Demery, I should say, for all the people who might be joining in that aren't completely locked in on it. We know that he had the injury issue just a while ago with the ankle. He's been back and he's been making a game of it, but I feel like he's still not fully himself yet. Yeah. And against Wagler tonight, man, he's going to have that. Where does it seem like he's at percentage-wise?
Yeah. I feel like as the tournament's gone on, he's gotten more healthy. He's not close to 100%, though, I will say. Sure. You saw him, without his performance of the last 7 minutes against Duke, UConn's not here. He hit 2 corner threes, back-to-back possessions to cut it to 7. And then defensively, he's the one at half court, tipped the ball. That allowed Berlin Mullins to pick it up, give it to Carabin, back to Mullins for the game winner. So we've talked about it, Isaac, previously. Silas Demery Jr. is the focal point and what's driven this UConn defense to be what it is this season. And yeah, he's going to have a huge matchup today. He's going to, and based on how he's reacted since he's come back, his defense has not taken a step back. It's more on the offensive side where he's had some struggles. So I think that's a big thing. They don't need him to be this offensive scorer all game long. They have several other options to be able to go to for that. If Silas Demery Jr. can run the point when needed and focus defensively, I think UConn's going to be in good shape tonight.
For me, for Illinois, like one thing that really stands out is obviously there's been a lot of tension on Keaton Wagler, who's been one of the most shockingly effective and talented freshmen of the country in the sense that he was not rated highly at all coming into the season. Obviously, the kind of Balkan storyline for them as well. But Andrej Stojakovic, who, again, is part of that, but also was born in Sacramento, to me, he's been such a huge part of what this team has done. And he's been coming off the bench since late February. He dealt with an injury. They switched up the starting lineup. When he came back, he started coming off the bench and has adjusted to that extremely well. I mean, he's one of the five most talented players on this Illinois roster. Some players, especially upperclassmen like he is, would maybe not handle switching to coming off the bench very well, and yet it seems to have only made him better and made Illinois better. And to me, his ability to get downhill, he's not a three-point shooter. Everybody heard the name Stojakovic and heard the city Sacramento. And yes, you're right. He is the son of Peja Stojakovic, but he's not a three-point sniper the way that his dad was. He's actually much more of a scorer around the rim, getting downhill, getting to the cup. I know, obviously, Nick, you guys saw him. Isaac, you've seen him since he spent his first 2 years at notorious ACC schools, Stanford and Cal. But he's a player that I feel like is going to create some matchup challenges for UConn defensively. Everybody disagrees. Nobody.
I could jump in on that. Yeah, no, I'll definitely jump in on that. Yeah, to your point, he has 17 points against Iowa, no 3-point stuff. So yeah, to your point, he could do it all offensively inside the 3-point line. The bench matchup here, I think, is also going to be a key because UConn also battling some injuries there with Jalen Stewart. I think Jalen Stewart is a perfect matchup for Stojakovic type. Now, his health is going to be a question because he just came back last weekend and only got a few minutes a game, three minutes in the Michigan State game, and then I think he had 5 minutes against Duke. But when he's on the floor, he could be a factor. He could hit an outside shot, but he's also a great defender, just like Jaden Ross is. So those two guys are going to be key coming off the bench, and this bench matchup might actually determine the outcome of this game.
Well, we'll give our picks. We'll give our actual predictions on how we think this game's going to go. I have a feeling I know how some of you are going to pick for this game. But before we get there, we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about the Michigan-Arizona game. Again, a matchup that I think is not intended to be disrespectful when folks say this, but a lot of people feel like it is a national championship matchup. Certainly, I think UConn and Illinois fans feel like, hey, we would like we're happy we're going to get a crack. Yeah, but this is going to be a heavyweight fight between two of the very best teams in the country. The matchup everybody wanted on this side, except Nick, you and I. We certainly were not hoping for this one, but we'll give you some previews of this game, how this thing might shake out. All that coming up here in just a second.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament Elite Eight wrapped up with the UConn Huskies staying undefeated at 38-0 after a decisive win over Notre Dame, while the UCLA Bruins rallied past Duke behind a dominant second half performance. On the other side, the remaining 1 seeds in South Carolina and Texas will be determined after their matchups against TCU and Michigan, respectively. Next up, the Final Four is set for Friday in Phoenix, with the winners advancing to the national championship on Sunday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, folks, I want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball Squad Show your first listen or watch of the day, as we are here a little under 3 hours away from the first tip of the Final Four between UConn and Illinois. We talked about that game, gave you some thoughts. We'll give you some predictions, some other X factors, various things to close out the show. But now we're going to take a look at the other matchup here. Number 1, Michigan, Dusty May and the Wolverines rolling through the NCAA tournament so far, winning all their games by about 20-ish points going forward. It hasn't looked like much of a challenge yet for this club, but the same can be said for number 1, Arizona, who hasn't had many issues up to this point either. This game will tip off around 8:49 Eastern time on TBS, FanDuel favoring May and the Wolverines by 1.5 points. And again, I kind of teased it there. A lot of folks saying, hey, this is the matchup. This is the one. I think Ken Palm's data has this as like the highest thrill score in the history of the website. These are two of the most dominant teams that his analytics have had in the last 30 years since the site has existed. And what I love about this matchup, outside of just how great these two teams are, is there's so many similarities in these. They both rely heavily on 2-point scoring. They're big and strong and physical. They have big wings. They have veteran guards. They have kind of youngish up and coming coaches in the sport. Like, there's a lot to really kind of like about how this thing might shake out between these two teams, and truly a matchup that I don't think I could be more excited for to see how this thing plays out this evening.
Also, both coaches going to Chapel Hill. That's one thing that we should throw in there when we talk about the comparisons between these two teams. But no disrespect to you,
Wait,
Matt.
hang on. I
Okay.
know Tommy Lloyd turned down the head coaching job, but Nick, maybe that's what we can do. Dusty May is the head coach, and then Tommy Lloyd just
As an assistant.
as an assistant. There you go.
Okay.
He was
Yeah.
pretty. I can speak to the fact that he was a pretty darn good assistant coach for a long time. So maybe there's some to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all
Anyway,
about
Nick, go ahead, man. That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. No disrespect to you, Matt. I love UConn. I think that as much as I don't like Danny Hurley, as much as I think he's kind of psychotic, UConn, they've got a chance. But I do see this game tonight, specifically Arizona versus Michigan, as the national championship. And I can attest to 3 of the teams in the Final Four. We got Michigan in the Big Ten title game, but we've lost to 3 out of 4 of these teams in the Final Four. So I kind of know what some of these teams have to offer. And when I see Arizona, I see a team that there's really nothing that they do poorly, which is kind of what stood out to me when we previewed that game on my show going into that Elite 8 matchup. And Isaac, you've been on the Wildcat train the whole tournament long. And I took a little bit to get there because I still wanted to have that hope that Purdue was going to be able to make it out of that West region. But when you actually see those guys, see how physical they are, they've got freshmen, they've got Koa Pete, they've got a backcourt that not a whole lot of teams have with Jaden Bradley and Burries out there. But then they have Big Mo Krivas, who made Oscar Clough look small in the front court. Like, that team is crazy to me how talented they are. Then on the other side, you've got Michigan and Dusty May, who's built up a defensive squad where you have people genuinely saying, is this the best Michigan team of all time? When you've got the Fab Five, they're going to have to prove it against Arizona. So this is the most intriguing matchup to me all season long. I can't wait to see it, but I do, to your point, Andy, I think that whatever team wins tonight wins the national championship.
Going to be
I think there's an argument. Go ahead.
No, you're great, man. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's an argument too of like, because both these teams have just dominated up to this point throughout their tournament run. And obviously we have seen dominant tournament runs before, not even that long ago, as Matt would attest to, as their team did 13 was the lowest margin of victory they had on their tournament run. I think their first one in 23. These two teams are
run.
Yeah, these two teams are trending towards a similar kind of dominance. I don't think this game will be won by double digits, but if one of these teams wins by 10 or more points and then wins the championship, there is a very strong argument for it being one of the most, if not the most dominant run to the national championship that we have ever seen. Because again, a 10-point victory or even like a 5-point victory over this caliber team is going to be, I mean, it's just, these two teams have not lost very many games this year for a reason. They're two of the very best that we've seen in a long time. And I think there's a larger conversation to be had about the concentration of talent at the top of the sport. But like, that is why these two teams have been such heavyweights all season long and have blown teams out throughout the season and have had very few kind of dips in performance. And I think there's so many different kind of avenues. Like the point guard battle is going to be fascinating. The front court, who defends Yaxel Lendeberg? Can Elliot Cadeau play 35 effectively for Michigan since they don't have a backup point guard? Like the number of storylines and just kind of intriguing individual matchups plus the coaching battle. I mean, this one it has just about everything you want out of a matchup of this caliber.
So let me ask it this way then. If one of these teams does continue this streak of winning every game by double digits, with an average margin of victory of 20 plus, oh, by the way, that they both have right now, which one is more likely to be that team? As we say, I do not think, like, I hope and pray we get so, like, Andy, you'll appreciate this. I just tweeted this a little bit before we started. I hope that we get a moment. The last time the Final Four was in Indianapolis, we got the longest game-winning buzzer beater we've ever had in Final Four history. That was the bubble tournament from one of Andy's favorites, Mr. Jalen Suggs, beating UCLA in overtime. I hope and pray we get a moment like that again here tonight. But if one of these two teams did bludgeon the other, which one is it more likely to be?
Isaac, I don't think that Arizona they'll win the next 2 games. I don't think that they win a game by less than 3 possessions. They win it by 7+ the rest of the way. That's really my prediction for how good I think that this Arizona team is. Obviously, our friends at FanDuel still have Dusty May's squad favored in this game tonight. I don't see it. It's a pick 'em for a reason, and I'm taking Arizona to dominate the rest of the way.
I would like to remind everyone.
Yeah.
There was a game earlier this season at Gample. 71-67 was the final. There was no Terrace Reed. There was no Braylon Mullins present.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to throw that out there. I know different teams and develop throughout an entire course of a season, but I know this team has been focused on Arizona since that time. And I know Dan Hurley has been focused on Arizona since that time. And this UConn fan base has been focused on Arizona since that time. And I think I've got Arizona going to the championship game on Monday night and a win over Michigan tonight. And I'm thinking it's going to be a UConn-Arizona matchup. But I just want to remind everybody that these two teams played previously.
I'll be slightly contrarian. I picked Arizona to win this game. But if we're saying that one of these teams is going to win by double figures, I actually think that would be more likely to be Michigan, because Arizona's one kryptonite is 3-point shooting. And it's not that they're bad. They're not a bad 3-point shooting team. They just don't take very many of them. And I think if there was something that could go wrong for one of these teams, like, in a way that would result in them losing by more than like a possession or two, it would be that Michigan, which has the size to force Arizona to shoot over the top, and they just take away the middle of the floor, and they don't let Kopi get comfortable. They don't let Krivas get the ball. They take that away and say, fine, beat us by shooting over the top. It is like there's a possibility that Arizona just drills 10 threes and beats them that way, but it feels less likely to me that would happen because they haven't had to rely on that all season long. And perhaps I am a tiny bit jaded because Tommy Lloyd has gotten a lot of his offensive strategy from Mark Few, and neither team relies heavily on the 3-point shot. And I think that is effective and works. And is the reason why all of Gonzaga's All-Americans pretty much ever are big men. But the 3-point variance does matter. And if you can't win a game by shooting 23s and making 12 of them, that could be a problem against Michigan. So while I do not think this will be a blowout, I think if it is a blowout, it is more likely that Michigan is the team that wins.
You know what's funny, Andy? As you started to lay that out, I was wondering if that's the logic you would go with, because that's where I was headed too. Is it's like, man, Michigan's actually a team that could force Arizona to take some threes. So I went and looked as you were talking. There have been 8 games this season in which Arizona has taken 20 or more threes. In all but one of them, they have shot 38.5% or better when they have ended up taking 20 or more threes. That's absurd to me.
Yeah.
I hadn't really looked that up or realized it. So I mean,
I'm going to put you on. What's the quality of opponent in those matchups?
Let me look. Yes, Denver, Northern Alabama. So mid-major, Alabama, San Diego State, South Dakota State, West Virginia, BYU, Baylor. So we've got 3 Big 12 teams: Alabama, San Diego State, and then 3 mid-major schools.
So two tournament teams in BYU and Bama.
Yes, yeah, because San Diego State didn't make it, did they? No.
Yeah, I mean that's not nothing, but I don't see them shooting. If they shoot 38% from 3 on 20 attempts in this game, then they might be the greatest team we've ever seen. And again, I'm not saying that's impossible. It's just would be a sight to behold.
Hey, quickly here, while I know Nick kind of laid out a bunch for us here in this segment, I just wanted to take a segment to shout out both of these guys, Matt and Nick. For Nick, just reached monetization on Locked On Boilermakers. Yo, this dude is a freshman in college right now. We had the chance to meet last summer, kind of by happenstance, kind of a funny moment where my wife was preaching at an event for high schoolers. He was there as a high school student, and I was there with my family. And so anyway, just shouts to you, Nick, man. You're killing it. This is Matt's first season hosting Locked On UConn. He's doing a phenomenal job. And it's just like moments like these just remind me of how great and incredible the Locked On network is. So I just want to publicly shout out both of you dudes for how you're killing it.
Thank you, Isaac. I'll never forget the day I got offered the job was the day that I somehow was in proximity of you and your wife. Never knew how that happened, but just a crazy correlation. But yeah, thank you, Isaac.
Of course.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. I mean, it's an easy job when you're talking about something you love, right? So
yeah. let's give some thoughts. We kind of already, some of you already kind of given your predictions, but we'll get into that. We'll talk about what the matchup we think it's going to look like in the championship game on Monday, who we think might win that game. We'll give some other thoughts on the coaches, some of the guard play, some X factors, all of that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the Final Four is here. We got 2 more games tonight. In just a couple hours, we got the championship on Monday. It's the best time of the year. Your bracket is probably already busted unless you are a huge Illinois fan and love how this thing has shaken out. But we got all sorts of upsets, buzzer beaters, all sorts of fun stuff happening in this tournament. It's nonstop action. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in that action. Here's the best part. You get up to $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. You can make game picks, futures. You can even make same game parlays for bigger potential payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. There's different matchups. There's new storylines, which we're going to talk about. More ways to get involved as the bracket has been unfolding. Illinois 1.5-point favorites over UConn. Michigan 1.5-point favorites over Arizona. We'll talk about our thoughts on those lines here momentarily. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on all the action. Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long and use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people who move the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move right along with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. And now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you get to decide. So trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, folks, closing out our show, continuing our conversation about these games that are now about 2.5 hours away from tipping off, at least our first tip between Brad Underwood and the Illini and Danny Hurley and the UConn Huskies. Let's talk a few little kind of storylines here. We'll do some rankings, and then we'll close out the show with our actual predictions here. One thing that Isaac and I talked about earlier this week that has kind of been ringing in our ears that a lot of folks have kind of caught on to is it's been 25 years, it's been a quarter century since a team from the Big Ten won a national championship. That was, of course, Tom Izzo and Michigan State back in 2000. And it feels like there's a pretty reasonable chance that comes to an end. Obviously, our friend Matt here would not like that to happen. But if Illinois were to win, Michigan were to win, then it's 100% guaranteed to happen in some capacity. I know a lot of us are rolling with Arizona. I know Matt said he's going with UConn, Arizona, in which case there is a 0%. I swear I'm really good at math. 0% chance that could end up happening. But that feels significant because it's been a storyline for so long. Obviously, Nick, your Boilers were in that conversation and were unable to get it done against UConn a couple of years ago. Michigan has been part of this conversation before. Illinois about in 2005 as well. How are we feeling about kind of the likelihood of the Big Ten ending what has been a quarter century drought for one of the best conferences in the sport?
50%.
Good work. Yes, there we go. You can tell that high school graduation has really impacted you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. I've been working on it, but I figure if anyone has a chance, it'd probably be Michigan, just because I don't know what the deal is with Matt's team, but as soon as I think that they're out of it, as soon as I think they're going to get beat, they lose in their tournament. And then I'm like, is UConn dead to rights heading into the big dance? They somehow pull off this miraculous run, get to Duke, and then guess what happens? I was at the Outback Steakhouse. I was getting my order taken, and my server starts going crazy while I'm trying to order a bloomin' onion. I look up, and UConn's up top. They're up. So you can never bet against Danny Hurley. That's why I say I don't necessarily think Illinois will be the one to do it. If anyone does, I think it's Michigan. But I don't think that either of the Big Ten teams make it out of tonight.
Ooh.
Matt, I assume you're sticking with your UConn versus Arizona matchup, in which case the Big Ten streak will continue.
I'm sticking with it. Yeah, I just think Arizona is the better team. And I think UConn over Illinois. Yeah, exactly. Hey, where am I from? Am I from Connecticut? No, I just see UConn over Illinois tonight, as we talked about. I think for all the reasons I've already mentioned. And then Arizona, they're playing great. I completely recognize that. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a fight in the national championship, but yeah, I see Arizona beating out Michigan. And yeah, I think the Big Ten is left there at the altar, still trying to find a national championship.
I've said multiple times this week, the most hilarious outcome would be if neither of these storylines end, because UConn wins their third championship in 4 years. And as Matt, I love how you just said that, the Big Ten sitting there at the altar again, and the West Coast team still would not have won one since Arizona in 97. And so in that respect, give me the fighting Hurleys to get this done. But ultimately, I got to keep riding with my Arizona pick. It's been my pick all along, and there's no reason to get off of that now. They've done nothing to dissuade me from it. So I'm going to go with Arizona to end the West Coast drought by them being the next team to win it. And Andy, if I remember correctly, you and I looked back on one of our shows this week, and not only is it that no team west of Central Time has won a championship since then, it's that all but 3 of those champions have been in Eastern Time Zone. I think it's both Kansas champions, 08 and 22, and then Baylor in 21. Those are the only 3 even Central Time Zone champions. Am I remembering correctly what we discovered?
Yep. No, you're right. It's all Big East and UConn. Obviously, it's all ACC with Duke and Carolina, and then it's Kentucky and Louisville, if we count that one, which we do. It's been pretty much all Eastern Time Zone in the last 25 years.
That's wild.
We got a couple questions here that were submitted by some listeners that we want to get to here quickly. A few things that Isaac and I talked about a little bit throughout the week. One of them, this question comes from Melinda Dolphin, who says ranking the coaches. So ranking the 4 coaches that are left. I'll give mine first, then I'll kind of defer to you guys, because I've thought about this quite a bit. And I think I'm not sure you can quite argue any order necessarily, but there's a lot of different ways to order this that I think makes sense. For me, I think you have to go with Hurley at number 1. I mean, he's been here, again, this is his 3rd time in the last 4 years being in the Final Four. He's won 2 championships. His ability to recruit to his play style and his coaching style, which I think is a huge part of this. He finds, like we've kind of said, he's the psycho, but he brings in players like Cam Spencer fit perfectly. Liam McNeely fit perfectly. By all accounts, Braylon Mullins seems to fit perfectly. Like, he finds players that fit his style and continues to find ways to win. Yes, the Big East in particular this year is not as strong as the leagues that Tommy and Dusty compete in, or Brad for that matter, but I'm still rolling with Hurley at number 1. And then it's a toss-up between Dusty and Tommy. I think I'm going to lean with Coach May, but it's really, really close. Again, he took a mid-major team in Florida Atlantic to the Final Four. Tommy's been very consistent, but has always had the resources. Dusty has been equally good, if not better, with similar resources. So I'm going to lean with Dusty May, going to go Tommy 3rd. And with truly no disrespect to Coach Underwood, who is very, very, very good, somebody has to be 4th, and it's going to be him on my list.
I'll go next. It's very similar to yours as well. I've got Danny Hurley up top. When you win the titles, then no one can say anything against you. Hurley has 2 of them, maybe a 3rd coming up here this week. So who knows? But Danny Hurley has to be at the top, in my opinion. I'm actually going to flip it. I'm going to put Tommy Lloyd, Dusty May at 3, but like you said, that could really go either way. And then no disrespect to Brad Underwood, but he's not quite on the level of Dusty May or Tommy Lloyd, in my personal opinion.
Go ahead, Matt.
Shocker. I'm going Danny Hurley at number 1, and then toss up for the rest of the 3, in my opinion. I just think Dan Hurley, especially with this UConn team and getting back to this point, going through so much adversity and injuries and the battles that they've had to go through this season to get back to a Final Four. I think that just speaks volumes to his coaching staff and his, not just him, but his entire coaching staff that he has. So yeah, Dan Hurley, number 1.
Hey, speaking of which, Matt, is there any word on who they might promote to offensive coordinator to replace Luke Murray?
TBD. We'll see. Okay. I've heard some names, but still early in the process.
Okay, great. I was curious about that. I really like how Melinda asked this question. She said, what order would each of you rank the quality of the 4 coaches that are left? And what's cool about that is it does allow us, as you guys have said, like, man, I hate to put Brad 4th, but somebody's got to be 4th. And it's like, That's because the quality of all four of these coaches is absolutely top notch. There's nobody that's like backdoored their way into this thing through luck or happenstance. Every one of these dudes is at the highest level of our great sport. And it just reminds you of how wonderful college basketball is. I know all the craziness of everything going on with transfer portal, and we got this executive order thing from Trump right now. We'll see what happens with that. But like, we are in some ways, and part of it is because the NBA is just we're in like a golden age in a way, where college basketball, man, the numbers that this tournament is doing on TV is insane. And so a lot of it is because these four coaches are so great. Just for time's sake, I gave my ranking earlier on the show this week. Let's just keep trucking, Andy.
Yeah, let's talk about the point guards. That was another question here that we got asked about, ranking the 4 point guards in this match, in these two matchups. That comes from Joseph Alexander. So I'll go here. We got Jaden Bradley at Arizona. I'm not saying them in order. I'm just going to say who they are first. Jaden Bradley at Arizona, Keaton Wagler at Illinois, Silas Demery at UConn, and then Elliot Cadeau at Michigan. And yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal group of guards. I'm trying to think of again, because just ranking them, it's kind of subjective in a lot of ways. I think for me, I'm picking like, who would I want to lead my team in a Final Four game? And I'm really close between two at the very top. I think I'm going to actually say Jaden Bradley. Wagler's the better scorer and probably the most talented player out of this group, certainly going to be the best NBA player out of this group. But Bradley's a veteran. That always matters a ton to me at this time. And he's a good defensive player. He's good on both ends of the ball. He's a good scorer, but also can facilitate, distribute. So I'm going to go Bradley number 1. I'm going to go Wagler number 2. The talent is just too much to pass up. His ability to score from 3, to get to the rim, everything, his size, he's the biggest guard out of this group here. And then fully healthy, I'm going with Demery at number 3. He's so good. And again, good on both ends of the ball. He fits really well into that Danny Hurley system. And then I'm going to go Cadeau at 4, although he might be the most important to his team specifically because Michigan has no depth behind him after the LJ Kaysen injury. He's a little bit inconsistent. When he's playing his best, he is as good as everybody on this list. I just think the consistency and then the defense is a little bit further behind the rest of this group. But again, that says more about the rest of the group than it does about him.
That was really well said, Andy. I feel like Kaysen getting injured more so showed how valuable Cadeau is to that team. And it honestly makes him look like a better player just because of how bad Michigan is when he's off the floor. So I still am going to have Elliot Cadeau at 4 just because of the quality of these point guards. But I can't put Keaton Wagler anywhere else than number 1 when I had a front row seat to him in Mackey Arena scoring 46 points on my Boilermaker. So I can't put him anywhere else than number 1. Number 2, probably Jaden Bradley. That'll get a stir. If you watch Locked On Big 12, there's a lot of conversations going on about Jaden Bradley at all times. And then, of course, number 3, we got Silas Demery. But, I mean, it could go either way as long as Keaton Wagler is at number 1. I can't put him anywhere else.
Yeah, that matchup between Silas Demery Jr. and Wagler is going to tell the game, I think. I mentioned the bench earlier, but that matchup, what if Silas Demery Jr. is healthy and able to play defensively, I think he might be able to shut him down. We'll see how that goes. The two met earlier this season. Wagler finished with 3 points, but he only played 14 minutes. He got in a little bit of foul trouble in that game. But I think also, if you tweak the question a little bit, the most important point guard for their team, I think also is, again, Silas Demery Jr., because if he's not on the court, UConn's defense definitely takes a step back. And that's what's propelled UConn to where they are this season as opposed to last season bowing out in the second round against Florida. So just some thoughts on the point guard situation there.
I'll also tweak the question a little bit just so I can give one answer and we can keep going. Joseph says, I wonder who guys would say is the best point guard on remaining teams. I'll tweak it to say, like, who is the one most likely to just go off and propel their team alone? And for me, that would probably be Nick's answer of Keaton Wagler, right? Like, I think any of these guys can be wildly effective. Like the things that both Silas Demery and Jaden Bradley can do to affect winning in a multitude of ways might be across the board. But in terms of like just sheer offensively taking over, that would be Wagler for my money's worth. Best playmaker or best assister, I would give to Cadeau. So if we were handing out some superlatives, that's how I'd handle it a couple different ways. And so just to have a couple fun looks at the question. I got one for Matt real quick, Andy, if I could.
Yeah.
Likelihood No, I'll switch it to this way. Over under a 29.5 point to 0 run in this game for UConn against Illinois. For those who don't remember, one of the last time, it might have been the last time actually these two teams played was in
they played earlier this year.
This year, yes. The last time they played in the tournament, I meant to say, was in that 2024 ridiculous run for UConn in the Elite Eight when they went on a 30-0 run against Brad Underwood's team. Matt, is that going to happen again tonight? Because I'm here for it.
I think I'm taking the under. I expect a nice competitive game. Illinois, despite what I've said throughout the show, obviously they've been rolling throughout the tournament, and they are experienced in Big Ten play. So all that experience is going to help them. They also have played UConn, so vice versa. The same is true. I said UConn's at an advantage there but they both play each other. So I think the matchup comes down, in my opinion, to experience. Dan Hurley has been here. Some of the players have been here. We talked about it already, but that's how I see UConn getting on top. Let's
close it out doing our picks here. And we're just going to do kind of rapid fire quickly. Give me who you think is going to win in the championship game. So it'll be, I will go first here. I'm going to take Arizona over Illinois. So that's what I think is going to be this championship game. Obviously, that would be Illinois beating UConn and Arizona beating Michigan. It also sets up an intriguing Kylan Boswell matchup, as Kylan Boswell is now at Illinois and also began his career at Arizona. So a little bit of a fun kind of storyline that would develop in that matchup there. It also keeps the potential. Is it going to be the Big Ten or the Big 12, the Big Ten or the West Coast storyline that ends? So there's a lot of fun that happens there. I do think both these, the reason that the FanDuel line is 1.5 for both these games is because they both feel like they could be toss-ups. So I wouldn't even be shocked at all if it's the complete opposite. But for me, I'm going to go with Arizona taking down Illinois and Tommy Lloyd bringing home his first championship and the first on the West Coast in almost 30 years. Why don't we go? So I'll just go in the order. Why don't we go Nick next?
I think Arizona breaks the streak as well, Andy. They beat UConn, though. So a little bit of a change in my answer. As I said earlier, I think that both Big Ten teams lose tonight. It'll be interesting, though. Honestly, you bring it up. I think the quality of this Final Four could be greater than anything we've seen in years, and even having all one seeds just last year. So I really do think that we're in for a treat today. It was sorry, I apologize. I think we're in a treat. I think we're in for a treat today. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys about these games. I got Arizona.
I've got the same matchup, different result. UConn over Arizona in the rematch.
All right.
No surprise there. But like I said, the difference is Terrace Reed Jr. and Berlin Mullins being available for that game, I think would put them over the top.
Yeah.
Terrace Reed has been the most dominant player for my money's worth in this tournament. It's crazy. And Illinois is going to have a heck of a time with him today. While at the same time, I think Alex Caravan's going to have a heck of a time with Mirkovic or whoever's at the four. So that front court back and forth, man, that is so fun to me. I can't wait. But as Matt said, like you got Keaton Wagler versus South. Just electric individual matchups all over the court. And that's in the first game. And then we get 2-1. It's just, college basketball is the best, fellas. I cannot wait. And so anyway, I have the same national championship matchup that Andy has with the same result. Apologies to you, Mr. Sean Visky. I've got Arizona over Illinois in my championship game, but it could just as easily, but like that to Nick's point, I could see any of these four teams playing on Monday night. And I think that's part of what makes tonight so electric.
Yeah, Isaac, just to piggyback off what you said, I think the depth of college basketball in this day and age of NIL, it's just gotten better and better.
Yes.
You just look back to last weekend with what was transpiring on Friday night in DC with those four teams going at it, and that was a Sweet 16 and then Elite 8 matchup with UConn and Duke. And now here we are in the Final Four with it's going to be the most competitive, I think, Final Four I think we've had in a long time, like you guys said.
Tipping off in just a couple of hours. I cannot wait. Going to be locked in on watching these games for the rest of the evening. And of course, that championship game on Monday night. That is going to wrap it up for us today here on the Squad Show. I want to give a big thanks to Nick, Matt, and of course, my co-host Isaac for being here, chatting up about these games. As always, especially to you, Nick, we do want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins. We'll be back. We'll be back live on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast tonight after these two games are over. We'll, of course, have a preview show of the championship, and we'll be live after that game as well. Until then, though, folks, have a fantastic weekend. Have a fun time watching these games, and peace out.